Hi, and welcome to my channel where I share everything you need to know to design your life. There will always be links below for anything I share during the video. In today's video, I wanted to talk about return on investment as far as it relates to your home. Now, return on investment can mean many things depending on if you're talking commercial or residential real estate. When we discuss return on investment, obviously, it's you put X dollars in. When you go to sell, you get X in return. That's generally what we think of when we talk about return on investment. But before you click off because you're thinking, well, I'm not going to sell my home, just hold on and hear me out. Return on investment is important, even if you intend to hold on to your property, because the return on investment could relate or could translate to market value, as in this is how much a buyer would be willing to pay you, or the investment and the return you receive off of that investment can translate to your estate building. So knowing the value of your property based on market value, which includes improvements and the investment that you have made in it, this is a way to know that the investments that you have made into this property, into this estate that you are building, that you're getting the maximum return on the dollars that you're putting into it. Also, it could translate to assets that you could borrow against if you're starting a business, if you're wanting to do home improvement, if you're wanting an early retirement. So there's many reasons that return on investment can be very important, but it can all come down to making the right decisions, making the right choices for the property when you go to make these improvements, making the right choices of the improvements, making the correct decisions on how much to invest in that improvement and or maintenance. It can come down to making the right choices of the materials that you put into this property. If you are in Alabama and looking to sell property, I would love to talk with you, and you will find my contact information below in the description. And be sure and ask me about my free staging plan when you list. There's many different factors that weigh on the ROI of any improvement that you make to your property. But there's always a give and take when you're making improvements on your home. If you own a home, it's hard not to have the conversation about return on investment. Whether this is investment because you need to, because of maintenance, such as you need a new roof, or a French drain, or your sidewalks or driveway needs replacing, or if it's improvements because of aesthetic reasons or functionality reasons. The way you make the decision on what the improvements should be and how much you should invest in those improvements, the answer resides in your intentions now and for the future. Is this an investment piece of property? Do you intend to only hold on to it long enough to make whatever improvements that you make and then flip it or move on to the next property? Is your current home your forever home, or is it just another step on the property ladder? Once you are aware of your intentions, it's a lot easier to make the decisions of which improvements and updates to make. The decisions that you make will either be based on the quality of your enjoyment for an extended period of time, if it's your forever home or a long-term property, or it will serve the purpose to update and move on as quickly as possible to the next property. One of the factors to consider is time, and I briefly touched on this. For example, is it your forever home, or will you be living in the property, say 3 to 5 years? Will you own it that long, or is it a quick turnover? If it is your forever home, theoretically, you can do as you please. But again, if you're not building the value or looking for the ROI on your investment for the purposes of selling, then perhaps you're looking at it for the purposes of estate building or asset building. The typical family stays in a home for a period that is longer than the recommended update for kitchens and baths. So if you stay in your home 10 plus years, the improvement that you make today to update your kitchen or your bath or both, then when you do go to sell at the end of that 10-year period, say, then the work you did is now outdated and you will have to do it again, or the decrease in the value of your property based on the fact that these areas have not been updated in the past decade. Now, with that being said, I don't want to make you think that your property is worth less than it was 10 years before, because of course you do have increased property value. But in that time period to which you're looking to sell, at that point in time, although you have an increased property value, improvements you made a decade before are now outdated. So compared to a property in that time period that is updated, it will still be worth less than its competition. 3 to 5 years. If you're looking at staying in a property, say 3 to 5 years, then the word to remember is compromise. If you just love the round tile that you saw for the bathroom, rather than going for a multiple color or a striking color that may be popular at that particular moment, you may want to stay with the classic white or off-white or something a little more neutral, so that when you go to sell, it will still be updated or still be relevant for the masses, and you can add those pops of color in other less permanent ways. Another suggestion would be to stay true to the integrity of the architecture of the property that you have. So if you live in a contemporary space or a modern space, but your heart really sings when you walk into the Victorian homes with all the gingerbread and the moldings and so on and so forth, do not add those features. Do not layer those moldings into your contemporary or your modern home trying to capture that essence. Because what you're going to do is you're going to confuse the architecture. So when you go to sell that property and it is a modern or contemporary architecture and you've layered it with all of this traditional molding, then a person coming in is not going to say, oh, look, they have spent hundreds, possibly thousands of dollars adding all these beautiful moldings, and we're going to have to pay to rip them out. Because someone coming into that property, because of the integrity of that property, should be modern or contemporary, is not going to appreciate the moldings that you have put in there so lovingly and that have cost you so much of an investment, because it actually depreciates the property because it goes against the architectural integrity of that property. So my suggestion would be, during this 3 to 5 year period, fulfill your Victorian longings by putting your Victorian furniture and your decor in this modern or contemporary property, because it's going to juxtapose and be very striking. But you're not going to devalue your property by adding anything permanent to that property that would change it or endanger it of losing its authenticity. Now, if your intention is for a quick turnover of a property, then what you want to do is design it for the masses. Now, this means to make a budget, and it does not mean to do the work cheaply or to do it unprofessionally. It's always best to pay professionals to come in and do the things that you do not have the skills to do, because you're going to pay the cost one place or another. You're either going to pay the cost for the professionals to come in and do it correctly the first time, or you're going to pay the cost when either you have to pay for it to be redone prior to closing, or the property simply is lesser value because of the cheap way in which the improvements were made. So keep that in mind when you're making choices. A DIY that looks like a DIY gone bad is not saving you money. So stay within your skill set and hire out professionals for everything else. So make a reasonable budget and then allot that toward the items that's going to give you the biggest return for your money, such as bathrooms, kitchens, cabinets, countertops, and flooring. And then a lesser budget can go toward things like appliances, hardware, light fixtures, and window coverings. So regardless of if it is your forever home, your 3 to 5 year property, or a quick turnover, quality matters. The steps and strategies to home improvement can be similar property to property, but it can also be vastly different. Always consult a professional when you are looking to purchase, sell, or design property. It may seem like an added expense at first, but it will save you money and a lot of frustration in the long run because you'll have the professional input to make better choices and better investment decisions. If you are new to my channel, my name is Clarice Smith and I am an eXp realtor and an interior designer, and I create real estate and design content giving you all the inside knowledge to design the spaces for the life you want to experience. To give you an idea of some of the home improvements that you possibly could make, I'm going to give you, say, the top 5 taken from the NAR list. The number 1 remodeling project that gives you the highest ROI is actually Hardwood Refinishing. And you will recoup about 147% of your investment. If you don't have hardwood floors, adding new hardwood floors. And for this, you're going to recoup about 118%. Our number 3 spot, a little less glamorous, but I'm sure you'll understand and appreciate how much it can improve your value and your enjoyment of being in your property, and that is insulation. When you add new insulation or improve upon the insulation that you have, you're going to recoup 100% of that investment. In our number 4 spot, it's basement conversion to living space. Now, this is assuming that you don't already have your basement completed. If in that case, it's going to add additional living square footage to your property, and that's going to increase your property value. And you're going to recoup about 86% ROI on this improvement. In our number 5 spot, it's going to be closet renovation. And in this particular renovation, you're going to recoup about 83% of your investment. Now, these are the top 5 improvements that you can make. Now, I know what you're thinking. Normally, and in the past, we've always said kitchen and bath is going to bring you the highest return, and this is still true only because they are higher ticket items typically, and they occupy spot number 7 and 10 if you're curious. A kitchen, you're going to recoup about 75% ROI, and on your bathroom remodel, you're going to recoup about 63%. Even though the percentages sound lower than the first 5 that I mentioned, it's still your higher ROI because the ticket price to remodel these areas is higher. It would mean so much to me if you would subscribe and become part of our community of powerful people. It helps me to reach more people, empowering them to design their life. I also wanted to have a little fun and share with you the joy factor of, say, the first 7 items on the list. The first 7 on the list and the joy factor for all of these are exactly the same, but I found them fun to read through because they are just so vastly different. The number 1 thing is to paint your entire home. That, of course, gives you a fresh envelope, and it can inspire you to decorate and to just have the feeling that you have a new space and a clean space. So I can see definitely how that's in the number 1 spot. Also, comparative to some of the other improvements that you can make, the price to do this is considerably more affordable. Although, as I've said many times, painting is not cheap, especially if you have it done professionally, but it certainly gives you a good return for value, and even on the joy factor. In the number 2 spot, if you just repainted one room, again, it's going to give you probably a spur of inspiration to redecorate and to go all in on that room, and that's going to increase your joy there as well as your enjoyment. Number 3 is add a new home office. This can be for personal or business purposes, but definitely inspired by events of recent times. In our number 4 and 5 spot is going to be refinishing hardwood floors or adding hardwood floors. Again, both of these are a number 10 joy factor. And the last one is insulation. This is the one that kind of surprised me, but again, it goes back to that fact that if you have good insulation, you're going to stay warmer, you're going to stay cooler, it's going to be better sound barrier, and so on and so forth. So it kind of touches all the senses. So again, that is a 10 on the joy factor scale. So all of these items, the painting the entire house, painting a room, refinishing the hardwood floors, adding hardwood floors, or insulation, and also closet renovation, all of these are a number 10 on the joy factor. Now, the joy factor is important because it's based on 3 things. It says that the joy factor can actually increase the desire of the occupants to spend time in the space. It can increase the enjoyment of the time that the occupants spend in the space. And it can also give them a great sense of accomplishment. And then lastly, I want to touch on a few of the recommended exterior improvements and your return on investment for those. For the roofing, which is number 1, and the garage door, you're going to recoup 100% of your investment. Third and fourth is siding. If you do some type of a cement board, you're going to have a return of about 86%. And if you do a vinyl siding, you're going to have a return of about 82%. And then lastly, for windows, if you add vinyl windows, you're looking at about 67% return. And if you're looking at adding wood windows, you're at 63%. So you can see how these improvements will increase the value of your property, whether you are selling or not. Remember, go back to what I said in the beginning. You want to look at ROI even if you're not selling, because if you're not looking at selling now, you may be looking at selling later. And if you're not thinking you'll sell at all, then you probably are building your assets or your estate. So it's important to keep a tab on what these improvements are and how you can maximize your investment. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I hope you found this helpful. And if you did, please leave me a comment below and let me know what project have you recently completed or is the next project on your list.